Member for Library.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give support to the motion presented by the Honorable Member for Kaswi South, our spokesperson on issues including the CIP. Mr. Speaker, I have been listening for a very long time in this Honorable House to many questions being posed by the member for Kaswi South in particular and the opposition in general. We have held press conferences asking questions so that the responses could illuminate the issues that would, of course, lead to a deeper understanding of where the government is or where the government is going as far as the CIP program is concerned. Mr. Speaker, the motion clearly states, be it resolved that Parliament by negative resolution approve that Regulation 2 and Regulation 10 provided by Statutory Instrument 2015 number 89 be hereby reinstated. Mr. Speaker, those who spoke before me have gone into the definition and have gone into the specifics. So I beg leave to just anchor myself in those explanations as I navigate my response and my support for the particular motion. Mr. Speaker, on every occasion, responses to questions by the opposition have invited insults, abuse, and sometimes they change the subject and advance issues that are not even of marginal relevance to the merit of the case before the House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in this regard, and at this juncture, it is more than proper to remind this Honorable House that the primary functions of parliamentarians, and I would allude to four. One, to make and change laws, acting on behalf of voters and citizens, debate the major issues confronting the day, representation, to check and challenge the work of the government, scrutiny, and to check and approve government spending, like the budget, and subjecting its taxation to systematic scrutiny. And I want to make it absolutely clear to this Honorable House, Mr. Speaker, that the opposition will continue to fulfill its constitutional duties in the face of the difficulties that we are confronted with. As if there is a gross intolerance for debate in this House. This is what we come to do here, Mr. Speaker. To debate the issues confronting the people of this country and to seek clarification from the government whenever necessary and for them to respond as far as practicable. Hence, in unhesitating obedience to what is deemed our constitutional duty, we have brought a perfectly legitimate motion to the House for the careful and sensible treatment of members of this House. Notwithstanding, Mr. Speaker, that they will band together and try to disregard the motion, try to ridicule the motion, we would be happy that if they were mature and sober enough to support a sensible motion, even though they are on the other side, would be happy to achieve that political objective. But this is not all we come to this Honorable House to do. There is the strategic goal of the motion, and it will be met, Mr. Speaker. We come here instead of a political platform at the market steps or somewhere in Deriso or some other part of this country. We have come to the House to debate serious matters pertaining to the business of the people. We're not causing any waylay anywhere because we can come here and debate. It's not every time we'll organize a protest. And our protest, I must remind this Honorable House and this government, that our protests have been growing in numbers, and as soon as practicable, we shall determine what courses of actions that we are going to pursue as we endeavor to return this country to normalcy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, once our strategic goal is achieved, then the action is strategically effective. This does not require, however, that the political objective is achieved. This is because strategic effectiveness is unrelated to the achievement of the political objective. Like I said earlier, we would have been happy if members opposite would agree that something is wrong and we need to fix it. But it doesn't really matter. We are speaking to St. Lucians at home and abroad, and we are speaking to the world regarding our own discomfort with the issues that we are debating in this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, countries have adopted the CIP for specific reasons. And the member for Kasui South East kept on talking about Dominica, where they have taken monies and invest in housing, in healthcare, etc. Things that benefit the people of Dominica. Given the tight fiscal framework we had, Mr. Speaker, because I want to remind this honorable House, we inherited a fiscal deficit of almost 10% when we got in 2011. And it did not give us much room to maneuver. We managed the economy. We were able to return macroeconomic stability to the country, but we needed greater space to maneuver. And it was in this light that the CIP was conceived. And everybody who knows me would understand fundamentally that this is not a program that I'm in love with. But I understand the significance of trying to explore new ways to deliver to the people of this country. So, Mr. Speaker, when we go to Regulation 2, setting up an account, an escrow account in a foreign country, you cannot trivialize the concerns of the opposition. It is like chat show de quet glofwet. We have seen that the government, this government, moved away from the national priorities of the people of this country and are interested in the agenda of foreigners. I do not have to remind this honorable House about how many millions of dollars have been spent on DSH. The abandonment of the meat processing facility of $25 million. I do not have to remind this honorable House about the acquisition of lands for new meat processing facility for $12 million in the Miku area, building of unnecessary road for Tioaking and DSH.
It's a badly constructed road, yes.
Awarding a permanent contract for vision planning. They ridicule us that we had no vision and we had a vision committee. But permanent $40 million.
How much for permanent?
$40 million, and I stand corrected. Acquisition of debt-laden Caribbean jewels property of over $100 million. Acquisition of shock swamplands for hire at over $30 million. And another $40 million from NIC funds to facilitate a Canadian billionaire. And when you amend the regulations to allow the escrow account to be set up in a foreign country, as opposed to what was stated originally, it must render a high index of suspicion. That is the way the human mind works. Shut show de quent glofwet. When we go to Regulation 10 about high-end boutiques, the government was very clear in terms of trying to improve the investment climate. High net worth persons to come in and set up, create investment, so that people who are leaving university and other institutions can at least be absorbed in the private sector. Because government will never be able to have enough space to accommodate all our school leavers. We need to expand the private sector. And in redefining the role of government, we need to begin to expand the private sector. Because the growth and dynamism of the private sector is very important to stimulate new economic activity in the country. That was the thinking of the St. Lucia Labour Party administration. So when Dominica can invest in their own healthcare with the CIP funds, they can invest in housing, it benefits the people. Because you see, healthcare is not just the provision of hospitals and health centers alone. It is the whole compass of preventive health facilities, good food, good water, and a clean and wholesome environment. So housing goes hand in hand with an effort to improve the healthcare situation. But this is not what's happening in this country. This is not what is happening in St. Lucia. Our national priorities are not being fueled by CIP funds to develop our own local sites for tourism, because now tourists are trying to come here and to get an authentic St. Lucian experience. So the opposition is not complaining just like that. We have come to the table, Mr. Speaker, with legitimate concerns. And members opposite must never behave as if we are irritating them when we come to debate in this Honorable House. This is what we must do in this Honorable House, because that is the role of the Parliament. In fact, we should be meeting more often to do that, to debate the major issues confronting the country. Come here more often, every week. Every 2 weeks. Come here and let us debate the major issues. Let us take our time and debate the issues. Sometimes I get the impression that people want to leave, they're in a hurry, as if the business of Parliament is a burden. It cannot be a burden. We must come here and we must ventilate the major issues confronting the people. That is what this thing is all about. So that when our students and future generations, maybe long after we are gone, when we are in our mahogany silence, those who read Government Hansard can say, these were contending views of ideas in this Honorable House. And maybe implement a few of those ideas, even if it is 100 years from now. This is the responsibility we have. So when the member for Kaswi South comes there and he presents a negative resolution, you want to attack him as if you're not supposed to do that. I find it's good. Because for a very long time we have been in this house, we seldom saw on the opposing side a motion being brought forward to the Parliament for debate. And I think we are progressing as a Parliament. I don't believe that we are a very bad Parliament, Mr. Speaker. People always say, you know, we don't agree and we always debating. But that's what we must do. You know, we behave bad in the Parliament and young people watching us. Mr. Speaker, the opposition comes prepared to debate. And members opposite always try to change the subject instead of trying to provide logical and cogent arguments to substantiate their own side of things, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to end by indicating that I support the motion as presented by the member for Kaswi South. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.